So time for another look through the papers in our news review. I'm joined this morning by political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and broadcaster and journalist Daisy McAndrew. So welcome back to both of you. And we're delving inside the Daily Mail to kick us off this hour. This is really a reflection on an extraordinary week of diplomacy. To think that it was a week ago that we were seeing some of those scenes at the White House and in Alaska. The question that the Daily Mail is asking here, peace deal, Putin is laughing and killing, and this is from a top EU envoy, they say.
Yeah, so this is Kaja Kallas, who is the EU's senior foreign affairs official, who was there in the White House during the week when the European leaders all flew to see Donald Trump. And what they're saying is it's all just an act, really, as far as Putin's concerned. He's literally laughing at the rest of the world. He's continued the killing. We've seen that day upon day. The bombing, if anything, has intensified. And he's stringing Donald Trump along. And Donald Trump, at the moment, doesn't seem to realise this. Now, he did impose another 2-week deadline to say, well, if Russia doesn't sign up for a meeting with Zelensky, then we may have to take a different tack. I think it looks like they're going to have to take a different tack because he's not interested in sitting down with Zelensky. He's not interested in peace. He wants to take over the whole of Ukraine. And he's not going to settle for anything less than that. And everyone seems to realise that except Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it's extraordinary, isn't it? Because she's saying he's laughing and carrying on killing, and then backed up by Macron, who's calling him an ogre at our doorstep, the Finnish president saying he can't be trusted. So it's not really telling us anything we didn't already know, but as you said, Donald Trump doesn't seem to acknowledge this.
Yeah, he hailed the meeting last week as a great success. But he achieved nothing from it, and if anything, it's emboldened Putin to go even further. So it's back on Trump, I think.
Yeah, just a week later, and very little progress to be shown. But just before we move on, the other side of that page is another article that focuses on Melania Trump. That also
it does, which is very relevant to the next story that we're covering. So the Express is talking about the children stolen by Putin, and this piece in the Mail is also referencing Melania Trump, who's we know very active about children, all sorts of children's causes, but particularly the children in conflict. And she, so we talked about the lack of diplomatic breakthrough last week, but the one thing she did was she wrote a personal letter to Putin, it was very flowery, and it said things that, a simple yet profound concept. I'm sure you agreed. Each generation's descendants begin with a purity and innocence standing above geography and so on. And she's basically imploring him to think of the children, but which is exactly what the Express is saying, 1.6 million children stolen by Putin's war machine. But the piece in the Mail is interesting because it's saying that Melania is really beginning to flex her muscles. She's beginning to be something of a force to be reckoned with, particularly on this issue.
Which is certainly something we didn't
children.
see in the first term.
No, and she is determined. And it also says that she and Donald Trump have become much more religious since that attack with the bullet on his, and are really obsessed with their legacy as a result of this. It's a very interesting other take on a side that you don't really hear about.
Yeah, and being First Lady is actually a very powerful position, actually. If it's what you make of it, really. If you want to do it, use it for good, then you absolutely can. And but I think kudos to the Daily Express for highlighting this issue. They're making it a campaign to return the stolen children. I don't think Putin, sadly, will do that, but 1.6 million Ukrainian children stolen from their families and having to endure a process of re-education, basically being turned into Russian kids.
It is slightly misleading, the number, because we've heard about these children who have been abducted, and that is tens of thousands, but it's not 1.6 million. But what the Express has done is they're lumping in the occupied territories, where they're saying that the children in those areas are also being starved of their own culture and so on, because they're being indoctrinated. But then there are the children who have literally been kidnapped and taken to Russia, which is still, I think it's about 40,000 or something like that. And those stories are horrific, and we've sort of forgotten about them.
Absolutely. So really interesting that the Express has chosen to give it prominence again. Take us onto the front page of the Daily Mail next, because this is Kemi Badenoch writing for the Mail and talking about flags.
Yeah,
Your favourite subject, Kevin.
I always just think that when politicians start wrapping themselves in the flag, that to me that's a red flag, really. It's just it's a bit of a warning sign. I always think about John Hume the former leader of the SDLP used to say, you can't eat a flag. A flag doesn't create a single job. It doesn't put food on a poor family's table. But when politicians wrap themselves in the flag, I think it's trying to appeal to the sort of the base feelings that we all have. We're all patriotic to a certain extent, to a greater or lesser extent, but I just don't think it solves any political problems, and it causes more trouble than it's worth. And she's basically saying, we know that it's a big issue at the moment. Some councils, for some bizarre reason, have been apparently taking down Union Jacks and English flags because they say it can be divisive. She's saying, no, you've got to fly your flag proudly. I think it's just more trouble than it's worth, flags at times.
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously saying, please, fly either the Saltire or the whatever it might be, can be divisive, particularly when it comes to England, because the English flag, the George, has always been associated, sometimes unfairly, with far-right groups. So sometimes we've seen, like, Birmingham Council taking down flags that have been put up, and other people saying it's outrageous. They've got their Palestinian flags that seem to be OK, but our own English flag is not OK. So that's why this has become so toxic. And then some of the local councils saying, if we tear down a Palestinian flag, we are inciting trouble. And people are saying, but that's still really, really unfair. Now, I'm a bit more cynical on the whole Kemi getting involved in this issue, because it's a cheap, and I mean literally cheap, thing to get involved in. If a politician comes out with a policy that's,
that's got money attached.
There's money attached. When you come out with an article like this, you're getting a lot of headlines. It's completely free publicity. You're not promising to do anything that costs money. Now, I'm not saying she's necessarily wrong, that there does seem to be unfairness comparing the English flag and the Palestinian flag, and one apparently being OK to fly and one not. Of course it is, but it's also a kind of cheap hit.
I think it also indicates as well how worried they are by reform. Reform wrap themselves in the flag. The Tories now think, oh my God, we're going to have to... You'll see Keir Starmer probably end up doing the same as well, and the whole thing just continues.
We're out of time. I'm so sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
No, that's
back
OK.
Next hour.
Yes.
Thank you.